We're jumping into a very interesting topic, and this is a very big topic around the world, and today they're focusing on your debt crisis, but some time ago this was actually the highlight of many a discussion in the States. So let's get right into it.
Okay, we're welcoming to the studio Ms. Farah Pandith, the U.S. representative to Muslim communities. Thank you so much for making it to the show.
I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, tell us about your job as the U.S. representative. Is this the first time I've heard that you are actually the first?
Yes.
And what is your role? Why has there been a need for your role?
Well, thank you for that great setup. I really appreciate it. Yes, this is the first time in American history that we have a special representative to Muslim communities, and I work at the U.S. Department of State. I work for Secretary Clinton and report directly to her. This position was established 2 weeks after the President gave his historic speech in Cairo, and you are very well aware that President Obama has made engagement with Muslims a priority in this administration, and that came from the moment he became president. In his inauguration speech, he stood on the steps of the Capitol and he talked about his desire to build partnerships and dialogue with Muslims around the world. Again, a couple of months after that, he was in Turkey and he spoke to the Turkish parliament echoing those sentiments, but it was in Cairo in June of '09 that he really laid out a vision of engagement based on mutual interest and mutual respect. So my job is one part of a very large effort on behalf of the U.S. government to really engage with 1/4 of humanity using many tools in our toolbox, whether it is entrepreneurship or it is education or it's science and technology or it's health. Things that we want to work on together as humans around the world. And what Secretary Clinton has asked me to do is to work with our embassies, whether it is Muslims in Muslim majority countries or Muslims that live as minorities. So I have a global mandate. I'm specifically focusing on the communities under the age of 30 because, as you know, most Muslims in the world are under the age of 30. And very specifically and very importantly, it's on a people-to-people level, and that is very unique for government. Usually it's government to government that interfaces. This is us engaging at the civil society level, and Secretary Clinton has really made it a priority to do what we call citizen diplomacy. So this is part and parcel of that large effort.
We're hearing a lot more about the debt crisis now, so how has that affected the focus on Muslim communities? Has the President basically kept everybody on track towards achieving a certain goal when it comes to Muslim relations, or has that sort of been diluted over the course of time because of focusing on budget problems and debt?
Well, I think it's a very important question. I'm glad you're following what's happening in the United States carefully, and of course we're all watching this as it has unfolded. But it's important to understand that any government, including ours, can do many things at the same time. And here at the Department of State, what we are doing with our embassies is really in conjunction with the vision the President has put out there. So we have not decreased our effort to engage with Muslims around the world at the same time that we're doing a lot of other things. Our focus has been very strong. I've been in this job for a little bit more than 2 years. I have traveled to more than 40 countries around the world in the last 19 months.
Wow.
Everywhere from Brazil to Malaysia. I'm talking to young people, hearing what they have to say and taking their concerns and their interests and their sentiments and moving them forward. I believe that one of the strongest things that we can be doing as a government is to be the convener and the facilitator and the intellectual partner with the ideas that we hear on the ground. You guys are part of the demographic I'm talking about, and you know that there is a youth quake that is happening worldwide. And the combination of both an increased attention by your generation to say, we have a voice, we want to be heard, we want to take part in the conversations that are happening globally, and the correlation between that and the tools that you have. You're a generation that's the Facebook generation.
Pretty much.
Right? I mean, you have 88% of your population here in Malaysia that is active in the social media demographic.
Perhaps the biggest users in the world.
Right, and I think that's amazing because you're not only able to communicate to each other, but you're able to take in 140 characters on Twitter an idea and move that forward. And so some of the things that I'm doing is collaborating with what Secretary Clinton has called 21st century statecraft and using those tools and moving ideas forward. So an amazing idea that I hear in KL can be connected to a super cool idea that I hear in London, or that I hear in Tajikistan, or that I hear in Sao Paulo, by your generation of young people that want to make the world stronger. And I think that is at the core of what partnership building is, and dialogue, and opening up those opportunities for affecting change. I called you the Facebook generation, but I also call it Generation Change, and I think you are a generation that is filled with change makers.
That's nice, instead of being called YX.
Well,
Generation Change.
I can't get away from that. That exists as well. But
we're also interested to know, since 9/11, there have been a lot of different stigma, a lot of different views put forward by the common American on the street against Muslims. Since you're Muslim minority country, how have things been since 9/11? Have things been better? Have things been getting along better? Are things smoothing out between Muslims and the rest of America?
I think you're asking a really critical question. It's a question I get asked a lot around the world. People are really hearing sound bites. You both are in the media, so you know. I mean, it's the story of the day. Every single day since September 12th, online and offline, you have seen the word Islam and the word Muslims. And the way that defines your generation is really important for us to understand. And it's actually at the core of what I hear with young people around the world on the issue of identity. How can I be modern and Muslim? What is the difference between culture and religion? And some of those identity questions are shaped by the global conversations, the global narratives that exist. Some are really great conversations that you hear about, for example, some of the amazing entrepreneurs that exist in the world. And you've had some delegates from Malaysia come to the President's Entrepreneurship Summit a couple of years ago in Washington, demonstrating sort of a different side. But too often you hear the conversations surrounded by issues of security or issues of terrorism. But I think at the core here you have to think about the issue of education. And in the United States, in the context of 9/11, over almost 10 years, we're almost hitting that 10-year anniversary, the conversations in America have undergone a lot of change. I think it would be fair to say we have a long way to go globally in terms of educating ourselves more about extremist groups that use the name of Islam for their nefarious purposes and the religion of Islam, and that's a global problem that we all need to do more of. But in the United States, what I know as an American and as a Muslim and as somebody who is an immigrant to the United States, that our country is based on a constitution that provides the right of every citizen to practice their religion freely under the law. Mosques and churches and synagogues and temples live side by side all over America. I mean, I grew up going to a mosque that had people from every, heritage you can imagine, from Southeast Asia to South Asia to Africa, praying side by side, and included in that sort of diversity. I mean, you're a country that is very diverse too, and very proud of it. You know the strength of diversity, and the strength in America is that diversity piece, and our Constitution that gives the right to all people to express themselves freely. So in the context of what's happened over the last 10 years, there have been conversations that have been happening online and offline about the need to learn more. You've seen multi-faith communities reach out to each other to talk about issues surrounding education. I've seen churches open their doors and invite Muslims in. I've seen mosques do the same. I've seen Muslims and Jews work together on community projects. One of the things that I am seeing, unfortunately, in my job is an increase of hate language around the world. And I know that you are very well aware in the context of the events that have happened recently in Norway, that people are talking about the increase of hate language. And one of the ways that I have heard young people react to that is, we want to do more. We want to build a world that is based on mutual respect, not on hate and the dissection of differences. So one of the things that we've done is we've catalyzed an online campaign on Facebook called 2011, like the year, Hours Against Hate, which if you go to Facebook, you can join, asking young people to volunteer their time in community service for a community that's different than them. And when we started this campaign, I did it with my colleague Hannah Rosenthal, who is the envoy to combat and monitor anti-Semitism. We thought maybe will get 2,011 hours committed. We're over 10,000 from communities from Turkey to Spain to Azerbaijan. We'd love Malaysia to be part of that that campaign as well. And I would really urge you to take a look at the website and learn more about the campaign and why we started it.
Yes, yes.
Interesting.
We
I
urge
think we need
our
that
viewers
here, too.
as well. Yes. Log on to Facebook a little later. We'll get that link on the show, on the Facebook page. All right. Still speaking about perceptions.
Sure.
Do you think that there is? I'm assuming that your special office, your special department in the Office of State has been. It's been in existence for the purpose of making that understanding clearer. As you were speaking earlier about how we don't really understand because we've never been to the U.S., so we don't know, we cannot fully understand the perceptions there. And similarly, people in the U.S. will not understand the perceptions here. So do you think that after your role has made this line clearer, or what have you been able to bring back there, and what are you going to bring back there from Malaysia and the thoughts that the youths here have shared with you?
Well, thank you for that, because I think it's important to talk about this cross-pollination of ideas and expressing what I see on the ground. The first thing I'll say to you is that when you are able to communicate at the grassroots, you're able to hear things from people who are actually experiencing things, not just the elite, not just the people who have connections with government, but from people who are everyday citizens who want to say something. In 2011, an average citizen is able to send a direct message to a senior U.S. government official. Now, I have a Twitter account, and if you want to follow me and hear what I'm doing around the world or send me a direct message, it's at Farah_Pandith. The reason I say that to you is because it gives you power. It gives you the opportunity to say, I'm not going to wait for my government or anybody else to tell you what's going on. I want to share with you some incredible things that are happening on the ground. I have people who follow me from Malaysia, and it's terrific because it allows me to say to people, my colleagues and others, here's what's going on in one community in Malaysia, or here's an NGO I've never heard of, or here's an opinion that is important to me. In addition to that, I think when I think about the importance of Malaysia in terms of a diverse country, a country that's living with multi-ethnicities, and the history of Islam, it fits into a larger narrative. My job is not to make America popular. My job is to listen to ideas that are happening on the ground with a community of Muslims under the age of 30, because those opinions count. Muslims on the planet are 1/4 of humanity, and we cannot solve problems together if we are not communicating with 1/4 of humanity. And whether we're talking about poverty or we're talking about education, it's critical that you build trust, you build dialogue over time. You may not like an opinion or a foreign policy concern or something having to do with the United States, but at the same time you may have an opinion of that. You still would like to engage on building stronger communities. And that's what President Obama talked about when he said building on mutual respect and mutual interest.
I think the rest of the world, yes, we see that you're reaching out to Muslim communities around the world, but a lot of people would still perceive that you're repressive of your own Muslim community in the States. I mean, looking at some statistics, out of the 228 cases in the Department of Justice, 186 involve Muslims, and you only represent 1% of the total population. So is there some kind of deep-seated problem there?
So I really wish both of you had come to the United States, because I think you wouldn't have asked that question. America is a multi-faith community of many different heritages and many people of many faiths, some people who don't have faith. And we're a country that has its challenges for sure on a wide range of things, but on the issue of the stat that you put out there, look, the Department of Justice has been doing a lot of work over the course of the last 10 years, especially in the context that you're talking about, to engage with communities and making them safer. And our Civil Rights and our Civil Liberties Department at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security has worked hand in hand with communities all over America of many different faiths and races to make sure that we are giving respect, that we're doing things in a way that works well with the communities, that are working to protect our citizens. And you will see the fundamental shifts that have happened in the way law law enforcement deals with communities, and in fact, the cases that have gone before judges that actually protect citizens of many different faiths, including Muslims, from discrimination if in fact that's something that happens. But there is a broader picture, and the 50,000-foot picture is this. Muslims live in every part of the United States. Islam came to America when in the beginning of our country. They came with the slaves. Many people don't know that Islam is a religion in America that has been talked about by presidents that go far back. In fact, if you look at the statement that President Obama made last year at his iftar at the White House, he talked about the fact that one of our presidents had the first celebration of iftar with the Tunisian ambassador. Way back, it was John Adams, and I think that that's an important data point. It's an important data point that President Jefferson had a personal copy of the Quran in his library. It's an important data point that President Eisenhower gave land in Washington, D.C. for Muslims who did not have a place to pray, and the Islamic Center of Washington, D.C. exists a couple of miles from the White House because President Eisenhower gave them that land. It's important for you to know all these things and the many other presidents in between. You know, here we are in Ramadan, and we have President Obama who will be doing an iftar at the White House, of course, again, and you have Secretary Clinton that will be doing something as well. And you think about Secretary Clinton when she was First Lady of the United States, and she was the person who was pivotal in making sure that the White House and the Clinton administration celebrated Eid.
Right.
So this is part and parcel of our country. We celebrate all faiths. President Obama talked about the fact that American Muslims are part of the American family, and I think that is a very important thing for us to focus on.
Well, we're unfortunately running short on time.
Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us and sharing about Muslim communities in the U.S. How can we follow you again on Twitter or on Facebook?
At Farah_Pandith on Twitter, and certainly on Facebook. I'm the only Farah Pandith on Facebook, so please join me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All of you guys out
right.
there, that's the Facebook address you want to address more questions to. I'm sure you have a lot.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we couldn't take them on air, and we're closing